Before we get started, let's tape down our paper. We'll do that by first pressing the tape against our clothing and then adding it along the border of our paper. The reason we do that is so that when we peel off the tape, it doesn't stick too well to the paper. Instead, it will peel off without ripping it. Next, using just a piece of tape or anything round, go ahead and create a circle in the center of your paper. Then add some water to your palette. In this case, I added just, like this, a little bit smaller than the size of a dime onto the paper. And I put it in the 3 separate sections of the palette. And then I added the primary colors to that palette, which would be red, yellow, and blue. When you're mixing the paints, if you have any left on the brush, it will waste it when you go to rinse it. So I just suggest wiping off any excess paint on one of those ledges. It doesn't hurt if you don't get off that excess paint, but then you're ending up using more paint than you need to. So I add yellow, now I'm adding red. Getting rid of that excess paint. Rinsing off my brush. Every time you rinse off your brush, rinse it off completely. And then also I like to start with the weaker colors. In this case, the weakest color would be yellow. Then we're going to label our circle kind of in a triangle shape. So on the top it will be red, on the right side yellow, and on the left side blue. If you were to connect those 3 colors, you'd see that they're kind of shaped like a triangle. All right, then on the right side, we'll go ahead and add yellow. If when you add a color, if it's not concentrated enough, maybe there's too much water, you can move your brush directly into the paint, and then as long as your brush is a little bit wet, you can strengthen that color, make it a little bit more intense. So I want to make that red a little bit more intense, so I dipped it directly into the paint. Rinse out your brush really well in between each color. Your paints do not have to be as intense as these colors that I'm making, but they can be. So yellow is the weakest color. Red is a strong color, but it's not the weakest. It's kind of in between. And then blue is the strongest color, which means if I start off with yellow, which is really weak, I will only need to add a teeny bit of blue to change that color. So we're going to combine red and yellow. When you combine those two, it will make orange. When I'm combining paint on my paper instead of in my palette, I will first paint on the weaker of the 2 colors. Make sure that it almost mimics or is really close to my original yellow. Then I'll add a little bit of red or whatever the color is. I'll add a little bit of the stronger color and then paint that around on my paper, because the paper is really absorbing some of this water and some of the paint. So it's not always best to mix colors directly on your paper, but for this example I am. And then when you combine a primary color like yellow with a secondary color like orange, you'll get a yellow-orange. Now in this case, I'm still starting off with yellow and I'm going to use red, but I'm just going to use less red to make this yellow-orange. So as you can see, it's not quite red enough, so I end up needing to add a little bit more red to it. Still looks like a yellow-orange, but now it has less. Now you can see that that's not as intense, so I do add more yellow just to make it a stronger color or a more intense looking color. And then to combine red and orange, you'd get a red-orange. Some students, they'll say, since it's a red-orange, it's a majority red, I'm going to start with red. No, it's better to start off with the weaker color first, because you can always add more red, but it's way more difficult to take away colors once they're already on the paper. Then I'll repeat that process. So between blue and yellow, the strongest color is blue, so I'm going to start with the weakest color. So I'm going to put down yellow first. Then I'm going to rinse out my brush and then add a little bit of blue. Sometimes it's better, so I went directly to a stronger green. Sometimes it's better to start off with a lighter green and then afterwards add more blue as needed. If the two colors look too close to the same, just change it a little bit by adding more blue or more yellow, whatever it is that you need to do. So when I add blue and green together, we'll end up with a blue-green. In this case, I'm just adding extra blue and not quite as much yellow. And then next we'll add blue and red together, which would make purple or violet. Now the weaker color of blue and red would be, in this case it's red, so I put down the red first and then I add blue on top of that. Now if I'm doing a red purple or a red violet, I'm going to make sure to have a really strong red so that it is the main color you see. And depending on what type of watercolors you're using, it will change how much of which color you add. And then overall, you're going to look at the entire color wheel when you're finished and see if there's any areas that you need to improve. And then for this one, just for fun, after I write my name on it, I'm going to use up that paint that's on my palette and have a watered down color and just add that around the edge. You don't have to do that. I just did it just for fun, so that I'm not just wasting my paint. One benefit of doing it this way is you can practice peeling off the tape and seeing how nice that edge looks when you have other paints right next to it. Right, so all I did was just using a lot of water and the paint that's already in my palette, mix those around. And then with my painting, once I was finished, I peeled off the tape, pulling away from the center, kind of in a 90-degree angle. I've gone over that previously, but when you pull the tape off that way, it will have a cleaner edge. And that's it. Thank you.